Hi there, it's Kevin with Gonero Games. It's closing time. Closing time here at the store. I'm singing, so you know I've got to be in a good mood if I'm singing some songs from my childhood. Actually, I think that song's a little bit even old for me when it came out. Anyway, just wanted to do a little bit of an update video because we haven't done a video in a couple days. And want to thank everyone. I don't remember if we did anything for 2,000 subs. The channel's been growing just leaps and bounds, and I'm just so ecstatic by it. It's just reinvigorated my desire to do content. Now, I know I haven't done anything for a few days here. Took the weekend off, got rejuvenated, got a lot of work to get done as far as orders getting out, and a lot of pre-orders and things done. So I haven't had time to really sit down and do a lot of videos. Want to do a Market Monday video and a Rogue Market video. I have a lot of ideas for it, but bear with me as I try to get back in the swing of things and get into where I can start pumping out video content consistently on all the channels, and we'll start reviving those channels. So appreciate all of the comments, especially the supportive comments. Man, the YouTube comment section can be a real drag sometimes. And I typically do get focused on more of the negative ones than the positive ones. And overwhelming, you guys have been amazing. And just really, really happy for the support. I don't know why people are so interested in just watching me kind of walk around this store and show the dogs. What you doing, Bruce? And Chloe's down there hiding somewhere. We have a mess there. You can see my One Piece mess because I just did a booster box opening of One Piece. So this store is a disaster. This store is an absolute disaster. I need to clean my back area. And yeah, get things ready to go for the never-ending cycle of products coming out. So today I spent all day allocating Brilliant Stars Flesh and Blood. We have Pokemon 151 that still came in that I was able to get all the patrons who absolutely did want some. You're able to get some 151. There is more coming on the way. I highly, 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 highly warn people about 151, about speculating into it. Because it has been said basically by distributors that it's going to be very similar to Crown Zenith, where there's going to be release after release after release. And Crown Zenith has just had another release, by the way, for Pokemon. So again, I'm still frustrated by all of the kind of growing pains that we're going through with the Pokemon Magic, Yu-Gi-Oh! Where they need to really figure out where we're at as a market, and they have to address the overprinting. But anyway, I thought that today is a good topic would be talking about kind of a case for a local game store. I think what Zach said to me today really hit home. He said that, you know, a game store is kind of like, or getting rid of the game store would be like selling bowling balls without the bowling alley. And that's kind of how I feel too about just board games and card games in general. They're meant to be played at a store where you can actually gather and meet friends. And maybe I just have a very nostalgic sense of local game store because they've just been places for awkward Kevin. Like I wasn't always the alpha I am today. No, I mean I'm super confident now, and just because life we've learned how to deal with issues with people. But when I was younger, I was not confident whatsoever. It was very, very rough for me to kind of get outside my shell to meet people. And game stores were just a place where I could relax, focus on a game, bond with people over a game, and man, oh man, will I fight to keep them alive. And of course, I had skin in the game, of course, on my own store to succeed, but I also want to see other stores succeed. Again, I've said this on this channel before. My dream, if I could actually like get someone to run this store and kind of, eventually I do want to figure out this business to where I can just hire a manager or just have someone kind of take the reins and do a lot of my responsibilities. My dream would be doing something like Bald and Bankrupt does, but instead of go and look at old Soviet architecture, to just travel across not just the United States, but the world, and see all the different local game stores and kind of the gatherings that go on there, and just the magic that happens there. I mean, you know, pun intended there, but also or literally and figuratively. But I was actually looking at places, even speaking of the Soviet Union, looking at a lot of places in Russia and even Ukraine, Georgia, that type of area, and just Google searching local game stores. And there was some really cool little shops that just existed. And you just got to see that the passion of gaming and game stores is huge throughout the world. And it's something I definitely want to preserve. again, might just be too nostalgic of me, but some of these comments that we got, which just didn't seem to appreciate that. And, maybe I'm just out of touch with like the vast amount of consumers there are there that don't care about that sort of style. Now, this is an industry that is going through growing pains as far as is trying to realize where they're going to distribute their product to if they want to be direct to consumer. I wouldn't be surprised if Pokemon or Magic just decided one day that they were just going to be like, you know what, we're just going to go DTC. We're just going to cut out all the middlemen. We can get it there cheaper than going through all these things. We're going to use eBay and Amazon directly, or just our own store directly to do this. Or like I said, just Amazon directly because Amazon's big enough at this point, and then use other means for outlets that or places that Amazon doesn't distribute to, and we can make a higher profit margin. And the whole warning with that is this has been tried over and over. I mean, this has been tried since the 20s, the 30s, the 40s, the 50s of these companies that get really big. And decide that they don't need any sort of middleman. And I'd actually like to make the case that game stores aren't even truly middlemen, that they really are. I like to make the point that they're more strategic partners than they are middlemen, because they're an advertising force. And I bring up a specific board game called Everdell a lot because it was just a great case study of what happens when you think you're so big and you don't need game stores, and you don't need to go through traditional distribution. Now, we can actually talk about traditional distribution and see if it actually is relevant anymore for Magic or Pokemon, where I think sometimes it's just more a bigger headache for companies like Magic, that maybe they could do a little more enforcing of how things actually were given out to stores and how pre-releases product and stuff, because distributors have done some shady stuff. So we can talk about that some other day, where maybe distributors are a little bit antiquated. But there have been, I'll be under the opinion they're not, because then they allow, for sleeve sales for other games and for a good symbiotic relationship for the whole, TCG market, TCGs, and board games in general. I think distribution is smart to, and it allows manufacturers too, especially small ones, to not have to deal with the headaches of figuring out how to get things to stores. The stores then just have a couple distributors to work with. So manufacturers only have like 5 or 6 distributors to work with, and the distributors then can take on the brunt of figuring out how to get products to the game stores. But going back to where I'm going to make the case for local game stores, and that's where I kind of got in a tiff with another YouTuber about. And let me just be extremely clear here. I actually do not blame what I call the soulless resellers. Like, I don't think that they're just a symptom of the cancer. They aren't the cancer. The cancer, in my opinion, is like I mentioned, the growing pains of Wizards of the Coast, Pokemon, Yu-Gi-Oh, and whatnot, not doing their due diligence, not figuring out, not really valuing stores, not figuring out a way that stores can actually make healthy margins. That's what I keep arguing with the comment section, is you guys think that the stores are just fleecing or are just marking up like crazy, when if you compare local game stores, of what their margins are, of what their markups are, and compare it to any industry standard, we're on the low end of that sort of stuff. You walk into most products on any other store, you go into like a plumbing store, you go into like a food store, you go into low stuff, their markups are actually a lot healthier than games are. The games have historically been getting hit and hit and hit. Lorcana just decreased their margins between, the markups between of what they quote unquote call the MSRP and what they're charging, or it could be distributors too. I mean, I don't know if I'm going to blame Lorcana specifically. Distributors might just like, oh, this is a hot product, we can get away with charging it more. But typically that's like a deal that's made with manufacturers. They actually try to guide or tell distributors exactly where to price. Now, maybe that's Lorcana needs to find some more distributors if distributors are doing that. But I noticed like booster box like $5 more for Floodborne than they are for first chapter. But anyway, we're going to go into this whole rant here with not blaming the reseller. So yes, you might hear me have some pretty negative comments for resellers, because I just don't think they care that much about, and yes, there might be some people that are passionate on getting into like Pokemon and Magic and selling it for cheap, just like buying mass quantities. Most of these people start with like, they used to be big buyers themselves, they used to be big collectors. And then they try to outlet it. They try to find an outlet where they can save money for themselves. And then they're like, whoa, wait a second, I can make a profit on this doing this mass. And then they go crazy with that. Most of them don't last because the profits are just not there. I mean, who wants to work? Like, it is just horrible. Like, that is where I'm really kicking and screaming with this industry, is I don't want to have to turn into that. I don't want to have to be someone that just blows things out on each eBay and TCG Player for $2 a box and do that night and day. It's just, that is a crappy living. That is just, I mean, that is not what I think that the stores should be focusing on. And that's why there needs to be healthy margins, so they can focus on creating an environment and a play space for people to come into. And a couple of these resellers that I've kind of got in on it, they're like, no, you have no value. Your store has no value. You are just a middleman. You're just a markup. You're the one that wants to have people subsidize your area, your space, so you can be lazy not to do this. I don't know. I think that's what really distinguishes LGSs from these mass resellers. And unfortunately, like I said, most stores are having to become that mass reseller, and I think we're eating ourselves alive doing it. I think that if one store becomes this mass online seller, it kind of forces all the rest of the stores to then compete in that space. What TCG Player and eBay used to be is they used to be a good outlet for stores if they had overstock and excess inventory, a way for that to push on all the stuff that didn't sell at the store. And that was really amazing addition to stores, because it got rid of a lot of the risk, where you could just actually recoup back your unsold inventory and then move on to the next thing, because in this industry, turnaround is everything, and the newer products, of course, are something you want to be keeping in stock rather than the other products. So I understand exactly that eBay, TCG Player, Amazon, those type of ways for stores to actually liquidate stuff is a good thing. However, unfortunately, what ends up happening, it's like one person gets in the game of, okay, we're going to blow everything on this, so that we're going to make that the biggest business model. I know a lot of other smaller stores, and again, no hate against you. I know this is a survival at the time, but when your business is 90% or even more of doing things online, and only 5% doing things locally, I think there's a big, at that point too, there's a big disconnect of what you are as a store. And you could say that my business model's been going that way with the way I do Patreon and the way I do a lot of other stuff. And it's just, I think that it's just not something that long-term is going to be feasible, because the margins are just going to get worse and worse and worse as stores try to outcompete each other. But the thing that really complicates that even more is when you do get these people that are just what I call the soulless basement sellers of card games. And why I kind of call them, why I kind of utilize or use the term soulless, is because they don't have any skin in the game. A lot of them don't care about the health. They will sell anything. It doesn't matter what it is, and they'll crash a market and they'll move on to the next one. And they'll do fidget spinners. They'll do whatever's hot at the point. They'll find the source, try to get it for cheaper. It's a race to the bottom where everyone's like, oh, I made profit on that. One goes away, 10, and it's like a hydra. They all pop up and figure out ways to drop ship and resell it. And so it does get cheap products eventually to the back end consumer, but at a huge cost of places that would establish a long-term way to buy and sell these type of stuff. They get actually just completely pummeled. And again, I don't really blame the resellers, because the market will always solve. If there's a way that these people can source inventory and they can sell for as little profit as possible, you're going to get that one guy that is willing to kill themselves all day long, because it almost becomes like a game to them. And a lot of them, that's why I say it's just such a grind. It is I want them to look themselves in the mirror and be like, is it really worth it to try to do this industry with making at this point you could sell scented candles for a better margin. You can source that sort of stuff and create your own little niche for that and mass sell those on the eBay and Amazons. I know people actually have done that sort of stuff with the grind. And the unfortunate thing is that I think with hobbies in general is so many people want to somehow turn their hobby into a job, and for them that's it. That's the only way they can do it. And so they just become these massive sourcers of product, and then it is just a massive race to the bottom, because when everyone's doing it, then prices become so cheap. And again, I think that's our biggest issue right now, is we've been plagued with that, where there was a time just a year or 2 years ago that everything was just such easy money, where it was easy pickings that you could pick up. You couldn't list enough stuff on eBay before it would be instantly sold, and it was going the opposite direction, where the people that were more patient with their pricings were making the bigger margins, because things where the supply and demand was wonky on the other side. So anyway, I get why those exist, and I get why people want to do that. And my only issue is when I do start ranting about them is it just does really affect the ability to compete in this sort of 2023 environment. And again, it's just I realize that it's just the way that life works. And do I feel entitled? I kind of do. I kind of do and feel entitled to make industry margins. And that I'll have to think about a better way to do this video. I had this like in my mind of how I was going to kind of lay this out, and I've done a messy job of this because you can tell I'm tired, exhausted, need to sleep. But I thought I better get a video out for this. But I feel entitled because I've signed contracts. I've made play space. I've been a cheerleader for these games. Like these game stores are that we literally have put our heads on the chopping block with if these industries they either make or break us if we can actually get those margins, because we do have overhead. And again, I will justify that overhead and I will feel entitled to getting those margins because of how I think the game stores have added so much value and so much health to the game. If you are a kitchen player, maybe you don't see that. Maybe if you picked up the game from a big box store your entire life and never even stepped foot in a local game store, I don't think you realize what the impact of a game store is. Today, I was looking back at the Commander players that were back there, like the ones that are really interested in it right now. And a lot of them, like we have a big group of Magic players right now that would not have even played Magic unless Zach sat them down and taught them how to play Magic, introduced them to it. And then they saw other people playing and other people like, hey, I have an extra Commander deck here, you should play it. And then they got addicted. And these guys, they've already spent hundreds, if not thousands of dollars on their Commander decks. This brand new play group that came from D&D. They just came in to buy some D&D books. We don't even run D&D here because that's such a mess to try to run as a store. But anyway, so that is why I do feel a little bit entitled to just getting industry standard margins. That's all I'm asking for. A lot of these YouTube comments are thinking Kevin just wants to be, get away with highway robbery. I just want to be able to sell boxes for like $140. When I have to buy them for $100, $140 is reasonable. It's a way that I can keep my lights on. And again, it's just come to the point that, it used to be like, oh, people would make $10, people would make $5. And then now it's to the point that a lot of these resellers, what they're really banking on is like the credit card cashback or, what they bought, the 2% kickback or whatever. I know that eBay a lot of times does like, these, if you hit enough metrics, they give a little bit of it back to you at the end of the month. And it's just at that point, it's just crazy how much volume and how much work goes into to literally making nothing at that point. So again, I apologize if I've rubbed some of people the wrong way of kind of complaining about the resellers, complaining about, but again, the frustration is mainly coming from the manufacturer side of it, that they could easily put an end to this, where they could just, I'm not even saying that like draft sets or set boxes or stuff like that shouldn't end up on the market, or people shouldn't have a way to do that. But all they really need to do is focus back on at least giving just a leg up for stores to actually compete. What I would do is I would actually do pre-release weekend and release weekend a full 2 weeks in advance and have the WPNs get a crack at selling stuff. Same thing with Pokemon before the rest of the market. And Pokemon used to do that pretty good. They used to do that really well, but they've been kind of miserable to deal with. But the main problem I'm having with Pokemon is I think that Pokemon has a vision of what they want to be. They have so many leaks. They need to figure out within their line of distribution where these leaks are happening, why things are coming a month before they're even released into the open market, why Targets and Walmarts have them 2 weeks in advance when they shouldn't be on the shelf. They really, really needed to fill up those holes. What I do like about Pokemon, though, is they do respect at least MSRP by selling on their own site, or like Pokemon centers and things like that for MSRP. So they don't try to outcompete their own strategic partners. And that's where Wizards just absolutely fails, is not only do they not care about having a good distribution line to their strategic partners and making sure that they do have an environment in which they can compete and make healthy margins and keep their doors open, or even justify making those purchases. At this point, I think the Wizards of the Coast is like holding us hostage because they know that we have to carry Magic the Gathering, that if we want to be a legitimate game store, that we just have to. You have to carry the big one. And now it was definitely around like 2015 that I just know that Wizards of the Coast just got so jealous of the secondary market making so much money that they're like, how can we capitalize on this? How can we recoup more of that? We don't want the Star City Games and the Card Kings making more than we do. So how can we recoup that? And they figured out ways to do with like secret layers, and then they just really ramped up their releases to where they could tap into the secondary market, or at least start to make it so they get the lion's share of things. And what that is going to end up happening, though, is it's just going to lead to the disintegration of their strategic partners, their local game stores, their play groups, things like that, that used to be able to be their little cheerleader force, or their little sales force, grow the game, and still be able to do it while making a profit. So Wizards, I think, is the epitome of how not to do it, because if you go on their website, which is basically Amazon.com, when they advertise right on their website to buy from Amazon, that is their homepage, that's their website, and you can get things for cheaper from Amazon than I can get them directly from a distributor. There's definitely a problem with their kind of philosophy of how they are selling their game. And at that point, they absolutely do not value with their direct to consumers, with things like secret layers, with the constant releasing a product at one price and then 2 weeks later dropping the price, which we don't control. Amazon bull. We know they have big connections with pricing, at least how they give their pricing to Amazon. But all those things that Wizards has to really, they're the one that I'm most frustrated with how this is going, and that's why you'll continue to get kind of these rants from them. So I don't want to seem too much like a loop on this channel where I complain about the same things over and over. Again, I'll have to kind of sit down with my thoughts better and kind of address some of these comments with a few of them that did irk me, but the vast majority of you do kind of get the boat we're in, and it really is. I mean, at this day and age, like, everything is still, that's why like customer experience is everything. Like, one of the comments, like, what do you provide? What's your value? Maybe some good customer service? Yes. That's exactly what we provide, and that's why people shop here, actually, and that's why people sign up for Patreon. My Patreon stuff, a lot of times is, I know they can get it for cheaper, they know they can get it cheaper, but it's the flexibility and it is the one-on-one customer service and the experience that does lead most people that are actual human beings to want to support something and want to patron something, whether it be their local game store or just someone they trust or someone they have a good rapport with. Yeah, that actually does matter than some faceless entity on online that's just pushing out product as cheap as possible without any care for the health of the game long term. Like I said, these guys don't care. They'll go on to the next thing as soon as they've destroyed this one. But again, the buck does not rest on them. It's not their fault. They are a symptom of the cancer, and the cancer is Wizards of the Coast, Pokemon, Yu-Gi-Oh! They need to get their act together. They need to figure out exactly where the supply and demand is in a healthy going forward too. I want to see Magic last another 10 years with stuff. I've seen all these comments like, well, Wizards is just cashing out because they knew that it was going to die, or they knew they were. No, well, why? Why did it need to change? Why would you cook the goose that lays the golden eggs? It has had a track record. It used to be what every other game aspired to be, and their business model was like, okay, let's replicate this because Wizards of the Coast didn't have a comic book crash. They didn't have the sports card crash. This is a game that we want or an economy in it that we want to kind of mimic. And unfortunately, they just threw that out the window. I'm with Rudy from Alpha Vestas. Next thing's like signature cards, then gold signature cards, and then it's going to be, at that point, it's like paint that was used on original. Like, here's some original painted cards that are going to be contained. Like, the artist is going to have actual, they painted this specific Magic card. That's the next crap that's coming. And like Caverns of Ixalan, we'll have to do an entire rant video about that, because that sucker, I thought we were going to see an end to it eventually. This is another master set. It's looking out to be. It's looking like there's so many like high value reprints in Ixalan, and I just don't know exactly. Like, at this point, I'm actually fine with that if that's the way they're going to deliver standard product. Is like, that's where you're going to see these bulk reprints and these flex spots like the Enchanted Tales or the whatever the Strixhaven ones are called, or the Brothers War ones were called. But at that point, then they can't do master sets. They've just got to give up on then really trying to capitalize on FOMOing the secondary market and trying to, like, a lot of times master sets, people bought into them because they thought this was going to be, once every 2 years or once every 3 years. And so that was the best time to get into these cheaper cards. And there was a lot of faith in them too, that they would just go back up. And I think that they've just lost their entire faith. Now, I'm all over the place with this video. I've ranted for 25 minutes, but my mind doesn't work that great at 11 o'clock at night when we're closing up. But I'll try to get this video up, and I'll see you guys with a box opening for One Piece, and then we'll be back with some other videos, and maybe I'll get some higher quality stuff and editing videos. Oh, there's some glare on this one. See you next time.